It's a massive day. Let's just go talk to smart people and see what they think. Chuck Rosenberg, what's your take?
If you want to start with smart people, Joe, I wouldn't start with me.
Oh, please,
so
please.
Here's my take. There's a lot in the indictment that didn't surprise me. We had been hearing for a long time that it would be related to the hush money payments and therefore false entries on the books and records of the Trump Organization. But there was some really fascinating detail in the accompanying statement of facts that the prosecutors filed yesterday, which shows a couple of things. One, their theory for elevating those false records and those false entries into felonies, violations of election law, both state and federal, and a whiff of a plot or a plan to violate state tax law. You also see the centrality, not just of Michael Cohen to the scheme, but also of David Pecker. And it's clear to me from reading the statement of facts, and I assume the prosecutors can prove or think they can prove everything in that statement of facts that accompanied the indictment, that Mr. Pecker, who essentially publishes the National Enquirer and was responsible for the catch and kill stories, is a really important witness because he had private conversations with Trump. And those conversations involved or included the details of how these hush money payments were going to be made and what they were for. And what they were for was to protect Mr. Trump in the upcoming election. And so some things were expected, right? The felonies related to the false entries and the bookkeeping. But the centrality of Mr. Pecker, I think, puts a new gloss on this. And it's something I'm going to watch carefully going forward.
So George Conway, I am a child, a product of the 80s. So I must say, after this indictment came out, I thought about two pop cultural moments. One, where's the beef as far as the felony goes? And the second was, the second one was, see, I'm a child of the 80s. I forgot what it was because the 80s, it just kind of blurred past. Big. This ain't Big. I don't get it. I don't get it. What's different from what we've been hearing all along? And the Wall Street Journal editorial page says, for this to be a felony, Bragg needs a second crime. What is it? Bragg kind of said yesterday, we're not sure what the second crime are. I don't have to even tell you what the second crime is. And so I talked to a lot of lawyers yesterday, and none of them Republicans, none of them Trump supporters, and all of them saying, this is a little thin. What were your thoughts?
Well, I disagree in the following sense. They don't really have to specify this early in the case which of the three possible theories of liability could bump this up from a misdemeanor to a felony. But secondly, and I do think there are very interesting factual issues that were raised by the statement of facts, but I don't see what the big deal is, why people are hand-wringing so much about whether or not this is a misdemeanor or a felony. There's no question it was a crime under New York state law. There's no question it was at the very minimum a misdemeanor because these books and records of the Trump Organization were false and that they did not reflect that the $130,000 was paid as hush money to a porn star, and it wasn't, and the rest of the money was paid to cover up to Michael Cohen, to cover up the fact that they were paying hush money to a porn star. And so it's illegal in New York State to falsify business records. It's that simple. Okay, so if it's a misdemeanor, it's just a misdemeanor. He can make that argument. But the fact of the matter is, there's really no dispute that he committed a violation of law. So
right. Is there a statute of limitations question, though, if it's just a misdemeanor? I thought he had to prove it was a felony to bump it up to a felony to get around the statute of limitations issue.
Well, I mean, yes, there is an issue at the statute of limitations. But at the same time, though, I mean, he's still going to be able to have the opportunity to prove that it is a felony, and there are different. He has these theories that could bump it up, and I'm not sure why, at this point, people are worried about whether or not this charges were severe enough to justify an indictment. I mean, this is a man who does not deserve any any breaks on any laws in any ways. I mean, he's absolutely, he's given everything his entire history. He's not the person you want to give a break to, and he's the world's biggest scofflaw at this point.
So if you look at the timeline here, just for our viewers to understand how this is going to play out, the next hearing's not until December. Prosecution has asked for a trial in January of 2024. Of course, that would fall right as primary and caucus season is beginning as Donald Trump runs for re-election. That may complicate things. But Chuck Rosenberg, we got the indictment. We got to look inside these 34 counts. And then later, the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, came out and gave that press conference, released a statement of facts, which kind of gave more of a narrative story of the case he hopes to lay out. Can you explain to our audience what the distinction is there between the indictment itself and the statement of facts? Because there were things in the statement of facts, of course, that were not in the indictment.
That's right. So this is a little bit of a quirky procedure that I did not use or see in federal court, but apparently it's rather common and straightforward in state court in New York. Here's what happened, Willie. The indictment is a bare bones recitation of the statutes, the charges that Mr. Trump allegedly violated. And I think George did a great job explaining that even if it's just misdemeanors, it's a violation of New York state law, plain and simple. But it doesn't include a lot of detail. When we add detail, for instance, in a federal indictment, we sometimes call it a speaking indictment. It's not just the bare bones, but it's sort of the meat on the bones. It's how the crime was committed, who committed the crime, how the money flowed, things that people said to effectuate the crime, all of the detail. And what the prosecutor in New York did was poured all of that detail into the accompanying document you just described, a statement of facts. It's a roadmap, if you will. It explains to people who care enough to read both documents how the government intends to prove the allegations that are laid out in the indictment. So as a roadmap, if the government, if the district attorney can actually adduce all of that stuff in court, it's a reasonably clear path to conviction. Now, it doesn't mean that the case won't be challenged legally and factually by Mr. Trump's attorneys in pretrial motions and argued, in the coming months. But that roadmap, that statement of facts, tells us exactly how they intend to prove the case they alleged in the indictment. And you can use it that way. Read it, and you'll understand the theory of the prosecution's case.